You left the location at 1:45, right? Yes. When you got in that SUV of yours, you didn't see anything out of the ordinary outside, correct? I wasn't looking outside. Okay. How's that even possible? But it's evasive. Did you see anything out of the ordinary? Anything? I was looking out the front window, meaning she wasn't looking at the lawn because they were in the driveway. So she's saying I was looking out the front window. And then my question is, did you see anything unusual? Well, you were asking about the headlights out the front. That's why I said I didn't see anything out there front. Again, just evasion. This is just deception detection 101. She's just refusing. If you ask your spouse, your significant other, if they're cheating and you get these types of responses, the answer is yes. Yes, they are. You didn't see the headlights turn on. I was turned to the back. Again, evasion. She's not even willing to say she saw the headlights turn on. Right. You see that. The headlights came on in the car. Yes, in the driveway. The headlights came on. You didn't hear Julie Nagel say that she saw a black object in the yard? Never heard that. So she heard that, she just didn't hear it at that time. If she admitted to that, then she would have to admit that she looked into the yard. And she is very purposefully trying to say that she never glanced one single time at all in the general direction of that big yard right next to the driveway. And so she's not going to allow herself to get sucked into that. So she says, never heard that. But clearly they have discussed that at length. When you got home, you got on your phone. Yes. And you're aware that Karen Reed stayed on the couch that night to wait for John to come home. I am not aware of that. No. So again, with the uncontracted denial before she says the word no, I am not aware of that. No. So she is aware of that. And I'm not sure that that's incriminating, but she's just not willing to tell the truth about it. Then he says that she said that she hit him 3 times. She declared it correct. And she says, correct. Not once, not twice, 3 times. I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Correct, correct. And it's easy for her to say correct when he leads with that. Now, let's see, you have very specific memory of that event, do you not? I do. I want you to look at the entire grand jury testimony if you need to, and turn to the page where you ever said that my client said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. She says, I'm not sure if it's in this document, but I can tell you today with 100% clarity, she said, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him on that morning. So again, we have the 100% here, which is one of her deception tags. So we know that this is a rehearsed, that 100% clarity. And she picked that up from Brian Albert. If you saw in his testimony, he doesn't say 100% clarity. He says 100. I'm not 100. Which is probably something that he hears around the police station. And you can tell she picked it up rehearsing testimony with Brian Albert specifically. So that's interesting. That's something that I would definitely note. So it's not in the document, is it? I'm not sure if I could take the time, and do you want me to read over 200 pages? Again, evasion, and she's basically saying, I'm not going to do this, and I'm willing to sit here for a week and read every word of this. So that I can waste time and not answer this question. Did you see it in the transcript? I cannot recall. So it's over 200 pages. So she is not willing to say that it's not in there. And she's glommed on to a way that she can get out of answering this question, which is saying I would have to read 222 pages. And she's saying that because I just looked at it and I don't remember. So I would need to reread that 222 pages. And if I do that, I'm going to not remember again. And then I'm going to need to read it again, is what she's saying. Isn't it true, Ms. McCabe, that you were asked when you testified no fewer than 12 times what my client said, either at the scene or on the way to the scene? At the scene, I was asked twice, according to this. Again, evasion. She's just arguing with the question. Ms. McCabe, truth of the matter is, you've manufactured this news story for the jury because you think it helps you out. Absolutely not. And she's shaking her head yes. So the confusing one is shaking your head no. If you're shaking your head no, that can mean a lot of different things, but it doesn't always mean that the truth is a negative response. But shaking your head yes is not something that people do. For example, if a child was murdered and they ask you, you were at the bar that night, right? That's your alibi. You might be doing this and saying yes, because you're answering the question about your alibi, which you don't have to think about because you already know that. It's very clear to you. You're telling the truth. And what your brain is taking time to think about, because the truth is so easy to say, is that a child was murdered. And you can't help but just think, oh man, that's so terrible. So no is difficult, but shaking your head yes, you don't see that a lot unless the answer is yes.
Ms. McCabe, the truth of the matter is you've manufactured this new story for this jury because you think it helps you out.
Absolutely not.
Most people will not say absolutely not, but she does, because Absolutely. And she's shaking her head, yes, absolutely. And then she throws in the word not. So his question is, yes, she manufactured the story. And at that time, you were confronted with the fact that the phone records show a 7-second call for 607. We're shown evidence that the 607 call lasted 7 seconds. And then she says, my sister never answered the phone. It is possible that a phone call can half connect, that the phone call sort of connects, but you can't hear each other. I've had that happen countless number of times. And if she would have said that, there would have been no way to dispute that. However, she doesn't say that. She says, my sister never answered the phone, which means she did answer the phone. So now we do know that she's lying. The calls to Nicole were deleted from your phone before you turn that phone into law enforcement, weren't they? Not by me. Okay, not by me. That could be true. Maybe somebody else did it, but he follows up by somebody else. And then she says, I never deleted any calls when I willingly handed over my phone. Now she says, I never, which means she did. She qualifies it with when I handed over my phone. So she deleted them at a different time. We know definitively that she did delete the calls and that she did it, because when she says not by me, that's a very deceptive statement, but it could be truthful if she knows that somebody else deleted them. But now we know, in fact, it wasn't somebody else. She actually deleted them. You claim that you didn't delete calls, but you do know that your phone was forensically analyzed and those calls were in the deleted file folder, correct? I have seen that, but there were 20 calls all in a group that were all deleted. So cherry picking a few makes it look a different way. She just told you here definitively that she deleted a group of 20 calls that had those in it. And when he cherry picked those out, she's saying it makes it look a certain way. At this point, there's no question. She's not even lying here. She's saying that, she says, I have seen that, but there were 20 calls in a group that were all deleted. She just admitted it, but it's not good enough for the court. She has to say yes or no. And so you get a bunch more questions on that. When did you hang up? Was it before it went to voicemail or was it into voicemail when you hung up? So it's a bit of a hysterical scene that morning. Where'd that come from? It's a bit of a hysterical scene that morning. And I was in a state of shock. As soon as I read that, I was like, oh, this is the rehearsed statement. And I bet we're going to see this a bunch now, because now we've triggered a response to a question. So all of her rehearsed responses are going to be stored in a certain area of her mind. And when a question is asked, she has to retrieve that rehearsed response. Once we hit this certain time period, this certain area, and she's asked a certain question, you're going to get a certain rehearsed response. So now we're going to see this a lot. So let's see. Hysterical scene. I was in a state of shock. And I was just calling my sister and my brother-in-law. They didn't answer the phone. I cannot tell you when I hung up because it was a hysterical scene. So there's a bunch of stuff here. She says, I cannot. That's an uncontracted statement, which is a signal of deception. This is also a negative statement that goes right before a explanatory statement. We have, I cannot tell you when I hung up because, and then this is the rehearsed part. It was a hysterical scene and I was in a state of shock. This statement is screaming deception everywhere. Everyone was running around, and what seems to be forgotten, okay, and now she's trying to change the subject. She's trying to make the jury feel bad. And what seems to be forgotten is that my friend was lying on the ground. And I liked Attorney Jackson's response there. He says, no one has forgotten that. But did you discuss these private conversations, how you three were going to answer any questions for the police when you were asked? No. Did you talk about what you were going to say in any respect? Okay, if you're going to get just a direct lie, and we're well into the testimony here, so I would expect to see one word lies at this point. I can't definitively say whether this is a lie or not simply based on saying the word no, because we're so far into it and she's been so deceptive up to this point. It's not a signal of deception, but it's also not a signal of truth. So we can't label it anything here. Did you talk about what you were going to say in any respect? We were in shock. Oh, we're back to the rehearsed statement here. There was no. Did you ever discuss the idea of potentially deleting any of those calls that were made in the early morning? Absolutely. That's what she says here. Would you tell us if you did? Yes. Now, this is interesting. She uses a deception indicator that I haven't talked about in any of my videos yet, but referencing yourself as a truthful person is an indicator of deception. When somebody says yes, and then qualifies that with an explanatory statement, yes, because I'm an honest and truthful person, that's like it's a negative statement. So you've got because, and then you've got I'm an honest and truthful person. That is 100% deception. So would you tell us if you did? The answer here is no. This is when she goes into Albert's bedroom. Did you tell them which officers were outside? I don't recall. So that's a yes. She told them which officers were there. Did you tell him Officer Lank specifically, the friend to Albert, was outside? And she says, I don't recall. So again, remember we saw that before. Then everyone was permitted to discuss the circumstances of the evening before going into the early morning hours with each other with no police there, correct? I sat with my family in shock and horror. That's a yes. Were you allowed to discuss the circumstances of the night before, well into the early morning hours amongst yourselves without any police presence? Yes or no? There was no reason for us to be allowed or not allowed. We did nothing wrong. Complete evasion. What that tells us is that because it's easy enough to just say yes, it's not an incriminating statement. It's not a problem on them. It's a problem with the police. The police weren't supposed to leave them alone. So it's not incriminating to her, but she's being evasive about it, which means that she was doing something incriminating at that time. So what she's telling you is not only is the answer yes, but she's literally telling you here that it's yes, and we were talking about what to say. And he was able to listen to what you had to say. He's talking about Albert. Again, you're creating a scene that didn't happen. Again, she's being evasive. Yes or no, was Brian Albert there within earshot when you discussed your version of what had happened? I didn't discuss my much. I sat there in shock and horror. So she started to give an answer, and then she remembered, let me just stick to the script here. So I spoke very little, to be honest with you. Again, to be honest with you is another qualifier statement. It means you're either embarrassed or you're expecting resistance against what you say. And that's often because of deception. What we want to determine is this something that's embarrassing to her? And the answer here is no. Yes or no, was Brian Albert there within earshot when you discussed your version of what had happened? There's nothing embarrassing about that. So when she says, to be honest with you, an indicator of deception. Well, if you did speak, he could hear. Yes. And Nicole could hear. Yes. So he finally figured out a way to phrase this where she would just say yes. And you get the truth here. I see. So you believe that Kevin was not there when you were still there. She says, I was in a state of shock. He may have walked in. So clearly he was there. Do you remember? I don't remember. No, he could have been. Absolutely. So she's lying about it. And then she just flips and was like, actually, you know what? Who cares? Yeah. He may have been there. He may not. Absolutely. All right. So you mentioned on Friday your observations of the taillight that day. Is that correct? Correct. You told Mr. Lawley that the taillight looked just like the photograph that he showed you, correct? I told him it was hard to make out and with the snow on it, but it looked in the picture that he showed. That's just a jumble. He showed you a second photo, a close-up of the SUV in the Sallyport, right? Yes. And you said, yeah, that's the condition of the taillight, correct? Yes. And what you told Trooper Proctor that day was that you saw a crack in it, correct? I told him that the taillight was cracked. Matter of fact, the words that you used were that you saw these cracked. You actually said, I saw a crack in it, correct? That's what he said. I said, I'm telling you, I said the taillight was cracked. So this is just rehearsed testimony here. And again, now we're getting back to blaming Trooper Proctor. This is another example of him screwing up your words. You'd have to ask Trooper Proctor. So she's not willing to say, and this is very common with deception. People who are lying are seldomly willing to say that somebody else is lying. So you're going to get a lot of deception here. This is another example of him screwing up your words. You'd have to ask Trooper Proctor. So I'm asking you, did you say I saw a crack in it? I said the taillight was cracked. So you didn't say I saw a crack in it, right? I said the taillight was cracked. She can't deviate from her rehearsed line here. So she's trying to play the victim. She just keeps reiterating, I said the taillight was cracked. It's simply put, that's just her rehearsed statement, and she's just not willing to deviate. You see the photograph. Does that look like the taillight has a crack in it? It's cracked. Yes. It's actually completely missing. Yeah. And I believe in one of the reports, one of the many reports, it will say that I said that it was cracked and missing pieces. This is another thing. You'll very commonly see people who are lying or being deceptive referring back to a previous lie or deception as if, because it's been said multiple times now, that lends credibility to it. So things like, I swear on the Bible, based on what I said in a previous report, these things are all credibility builders that are based on nothing. So a credibility builder is an indicator of deception. And you knew that Trooper Proctor was going to show up and interview you and Mr. McCabe, correct? On the phone, he asked, he wanted to speak with me. And you believe that statement? He didn't hear anything about what was going to happen. 100. And then, unfortunately, she tries to interject an answer here, but it's right in the middle of the question. And Mr. Jackson keeps talking. Let's back up here. But he was there when you were interviewed, wasn't he? He was upstairs. This is Brian Albert. He was upstairs, yes. And you believe that statement? He didn't hear anything about what was going to happen, 100% or 100 about the interview. And then she starts over again and says, no, I don't think he could hear it from where he was. So reduction of commitment means she doesn't believe what she's saying. We don't believe what she's saying. But you know he was just a few feet away. I knew he was in my bedroom. This is a forensic extraction report. John O'Keefe's phone that you were shown on Friday, correct? Correct. But there is not a single call before 5:52 a.m. between 12:14 and 12:50 a.m. Is that right? Not one. So this, and this is explained later, this is at the time of the murder. So you can expect to see some pretty serious deception and sensitivity right at the time of the murder. So not one. It's very hard to, this report from time-wise. So again, we get this jumble of words. This is because she's trying to answer the question deceptively, but she's not remembering a rehearsed statement at this point. But you can look at every single time on the report. There's not that many. So there's just literally a report at this point, what I skipped over. There's a report that shows that she was calling John O'Keefe's phone over and over again, and he wasn't answering it. Just kept calling over and over again. And then afterwards, she deletes all those calls. So why would she delete all those calls? Well, he actually tells you exactly why in here. Let's see. I'm just trying to say that it goes from 7:21 to 7:50. Okay, so at this point, Mr. Jackson is asking her to look at the report of her deleted calls to show side by side. You've got John O'Keefe's report from his phone that shows that he received calls from her phone, and then the report with her phone that doesn't show the outgoing calls because they were deleted. This shows intent on her part, and she's not willing to admit that. This is where she's going to play dumb. This is the question. Between 12:14 and 12:50 a.m. Is that right? Not one. And she says it's very hard to, this report from the time-wise. But if you can look at every single time on the report, there's not that many. She says, I'm just trying to say that it goes from 7:21 to 5:52 to 7:33 to 7:49. There's no order. They're out of order. That's pretty intense evasion. Just plain so dumb that she can't make heads or tails out of all of these letters and numbers on this piece of paper. Every one of the calls that you made to John O'Keefe's phone between 12:14 and 12:50 a.m. was deleted and unrecovered, correct? She says, I didn't understand that report and I'm not an expert. Clear deception here. That's evasion and claiming she doesn't understand the question. She doesn't understand the report. Okay, so your cell phone extraction, which is the handshake to John O'Keefe's phone, meaning that's where they connect, and all your calls are missing. And she says, I'm confused. That paper, I don't understand it. It was vague. There was numbers. There were calls everywhere. There was a number of missing calls.
Wait a minute. This report has times everywhere. It's very hard to, this report jumps time-wise. I'm just trying to say that it goes from 7:21 to 5:52 to 7:33 to 7:49. There's no order. They're out of order. I didn't understand that report, and I'm not an expert. I'm confused. That paper, I don't understand it. It was vague. There were numbers. There were calls everywhere. There was a number of missing calls.
Is that right? Yes or no? They're not there.
A lot of calls are missing.
The fact is that you deleted your call record when you turned your cell phone in, didn't you, Miss McCabe? That's what the report shows. Absolutely not, which means absolutely yes. You sanitized your phone because you didn't want the police to know who you had been calling or the fact that you had been calling John O'Keefe's phone incessantly, correct? Incorrect. Again, that is her way of just saying correct. Then she says, I willingly turned over my phone, which is completely unrelated to the question. This is evasion trying to change the subject. After you deleted your phone call log, correct? Absolutely not, which means absolutely. Did you delete any phone calls? I do not, uncontracted, I do not recall deleting any phone calls at all. I would have no reason to delete anything. Now she's leaning on that. It's kind of like saying I'm an honest person. I would have no reason. Anytime somebody says I would have no reason to do that, it's a sign of deception. So that's very different than I didn't delete any phone calls. So he actually knows something about deception here and is directly calling her out on the uncontracted denial, along with the difference between recalling it and actually doing it. So that's very different than I didn't delete any phone calls. I do not remember deleting phone calls means you might have. And as she says, in day-to-day life, people delete things, but I do not recall deleting any phone calls. So more evasion. Does it appear to you, so they were forced to move on. Does it appear to you from the chat that Matt McCabe was directing witnesses, specifically Chris Albert, what to say to the news media? That is not how I would understand this. She is simply just not willing to agree. Any ability that she has to just argue with the question, she's going to take it. He never went in to tell them. He never went in the house. Was the story that had been constructed between and among this group of people on this chat correct? No, John never went into the house. Okay, so she just confirmed that he did go into the house because she said never. It wasn't a story. It was the truth. And it is the truth. So she likes to lean on these sort of character boosting. You didn't have a need to get Carrie Roberts' phone number, did you? She says, I wanted to speak with Carrie. Carrie Roberts' number, Miss McCabe, is because you wanted to make sure that you control her story as she left your site, correct? Absolutely not. That's just a very clear answer that that's exactly why she wanted it. You were present for the interview, Miss McCabe. She says, I was in the house, yes, when this is in regards to Carrie Roberts. So after this timeline was created on February 1st, at some point thereafter, Carrie Roberts conducted a formal interview with police about the case, correct? And you listened to the interview, didn't you? No, I did not. So uncontracted denial. You know what that means? She did listen. Did you tell her everything that you wanted her to say? No, I did not. Okay, clearly, again, yes, they rehearsed it. Did you in any way attempt to influence her testimony before she gave that interview in your living room? Absolutely not. Carrie is her own person. So this is a nonsense statement, and absolutely not means yes, she did. But then you did report her progress to the Albert McCabe group in that group chat, didn't you? Can you show me where, please? Oh, she's evading that question. Sure. Do you remember that? I see that. Yes. And the very next text is from you telling the group she's telling them everything in all caps, 2 exclamation points. Yes. So now she's reading from the report and she's admitting that that's what she said in the text messages. And then you're reporting that interview back, or her success in that interview in your mind, back to the group involving Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, and Matt McCabe. Isn't that what you're doing? I absolutely not. So yes, seems like Attorney Jackson has this storyline nailed because it's relentless. She has just literally nowhere where she can tell the truth. She's deceptive in just about every single statement. Let's see, that is not how it went. I was horrified. Again, okay, so she loves this word. This is part of her rehearsed testimony. I was horrified because Carrie's a blunt person, not like me. And she had made a comment about Miss Reed and Mr. O'Keefe's relationship. And I was shocked and horrified that she said it the way she did. I said, oh my God, she's telling them everything. Yes. So this is her description of what the word everything means. Something about Karen Reed. The everything you referred to in the text in real time was what you had worked out with Carrie in the timeline meeting, wasn't it? That was the everything that you were referring to, correct? Incorrect, meaning correct. We never, okay, again, okay, we've got incorrect, we've got never. We never worked together to come up with a story. 2 indicators of deception here. This is extremely sensitive. This part is sensitive and it's not hidden. This is collusion. We have the facts and everything was a comment about your client. Now she's trying to make a veiled threat there. Oh, what we were talking about was your client. So if you keep asking me questions, I'm going to start saying bad things about Carrie Reed in court. She'll be making it up, but she's getting ready now to just say nasty things about her in court, which is an attempt to get Mr. Jackson to veer away from that line of questioning. You'll see that a lot in your personal conversations. So be aware of this type of, this is not evasion so much as like a counterattack technique. You went on your group chat with Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, Matt McKay to give running updates about whether or not Carrie Roberts was actually following the script, correct? Incorrect. There was no script, which means there was a script. There's yet another text from Brian's wife. Okay. So now this is the longest that she's ever allowed to talk without being interrupted. In this statement, we decided that we would talk on the phone. Oh, this is because she made a comment in here. We shouldn't be talking about this over text. Clearly to avoid that information getting to the police. But this is her answer. We decided that we would talk on the phone. My children look on my phone. Her children look on her phone. We were working with the police. I was sharing information and everything that had happened. We didn't want to leave our little circle because we were trying to figure out what had happened. And we're not going to go running around letting people see, oh my gosh, they think this might have happened or whatever, blah, blah, blah. She's making all of this up on the spot. It's her normal sort of rambling storyline. But if there's one thing we noticed in here, there's no I, no use of the word I in this entire paragraph, which means that she is making all of this up on the spot. And it's very clear. It's stuff she's said before. This is just sort of running a bunch of her rehearsed statements together into one paragraph. But then none of them have I. The only I in here I highlighted. I was sharing information. That she was. She was definitely sharing information. So that is the only honest bit of information here, which is that she was sharing information. Did anything significant happen on January 30th in connection with this case? Any meetings, any get-togethers that you can think of? And then she says, I went to the O'Keefe's house. And the next question here is, I'm not talking about the O'Keefe's house. He's talking about they went to Officer Lank's house, which is the officer that showed up on the first day when John O'Keefe was found in the yard, and they never reported that meeting. So now he's going to ask questions about it. You pulled up to the house on the 30th. That's never been reported. Has. And then she says, I guess I never thought much of it. Okay, so clearly a lie. Never thought about reporting the fact that one of the first responding officers on a case of Canton PD, which is considered off the case, you had a meeting with, that was unreported the next day. And she says, I didn't meet with Michael Lank. So this looks like a truthful statement. She didn't meet with Michael Lank on that day. That's, I think, like the second truthful statement in here that's a relevant question. Okay, and you all had a conversation about what? She's talking about Michael Lank's wife. Got into the car and was her and Carrie are friends, and she was checking on Carrie and, just saying, oh my God, this is so crazy, just checking on the O'Keefes. Never went in the house. I might have ran in to go to the bathroom. So now he's asking her if she ever left the car to go into the house. And she says she might have ran in to go to the bathroom. The DA's office had an interview with you, correct? Not an interview. They just explained this process. You met with some folks at the DA's office. Who did you meet with? She says, Mr. Lawley, Ms. McLaughlin, whatever. I believe another woman. Now, I highlighted this in green. When somebody says in a statement like this, I can't remember, that is the truthful way of saying it. Saying I don't remember is deceptive. Saying I can't remember is truthful. And the reason for that is because when you say I don't remember, you're not actually trying to remember. That's what makes it deceptive. When you say I can't remember, it means that you're searching your memory banks and reporting back on the status of that search. So you're looking for it. And then the words that express that are, I can't remember. Like you're trying to remember, but you say, I don't remember. It means that you're not actually trying to remember anything. So this is truthful, is what I'm saying. She had this meeting at the DA's office that wasn't reported. And there was somebody, she says, I believe another woman, I can't remember her name, unfortunately. That's truthful. She actually can't remember who the last person was that was there. So again, it's not like literally everything that she says in this statement is deceptive. I'm not just trying to find deception in every statement. Every one of her statements screams deception. Now we get into a part with Allie, who is Jen McCabe's daughter. So there's not a lot that's allowed to be talked about in the trial. So did the DA talk to Allie? Allie and I were both in the room when they went over everything. You know how all this works because this is all brand new to us, whatever. So she starts saying when they received. And then Attorney Jackson actually follows up on that. You were about to say that lost the end of the sentence when they received what? And she says, I didn't mean the word received. And that's actually truthful. She started saying a sentence and she said the word received. We don't know why she said the word received, but I believe her that that was the wrong word, that she said something that she didn't actually mean. And so she started over. She didn't mean received. So because she says, I didn't mean the word received. I don't think she started to say something that was incriminating and then stopped. I think she really didn't mean it. And during the half an hour to an hour, did you go over what they expected your testimony to be? They never spoke about what they expected my testimony to be. This is interesting because she is talking about Mr. Lawley. If this is incriminating, this has the potential to be incriminating to the prosecution, right? That they didn't disclose something. So when she says never, I thought, wow, is it possible that she's telling the truth here and used the word never to describe the truth? So then we keep looking. During this meeting, did Mr. Lawley tell you one of the things that's going to be coming? Did you have an off-the-book meeting at Lank's house for 45 minutes? Did he tell you that? No, that's not how it was told. Okay, so that's pretty sensitive right there. So he's going to follow up. Did he tell you that the defense has uncovered a report that established that you were actually at Mr. Lank's house for 45 minutes that had never been reported to the defense or the prosecution before the phone extraction had been done? Did he tell you that? I was asked, oh, were you at Mr. Lank's house on the 30th? So you've had a lot of time to come up with a story about why you were at Michael Lank's house, correct? And then she says, I didn't need time to make up a story. It's a negative statement with an explanatory statement because, and then she says, I have the truth of why we went. So anytime she refers to the truth, again, that is an indicator of deception. So now we have a triple indicator of deception in here. And so, yes, they have spent quite a bit of time. And I put this in bold because this is very pertinent. This is very, very important. And whenever you see 2 or 3 indicators of deception in one sentence, that means it's not just deceptive. It's deceptive and it's important. It's important to the case. Why they went to Michael Lang's house is very important. And the truth, according to you, is he pulled up at Michael Lang's house. The first responding officer and friends of the Alberts had a meeting with him the next day. It was never reported to anybody for any purpose. He had just met with his wife in the car. Well, while the car was running for 45 minutes to an hour, that's your story. She says, that's not a story, it's the truth. Carrie dropped off her daughter. The wife came out. Carrie is a talker. They started talking. Tragedy happened the day before. It's very rehearsed. This is exactly what her rehearsed statements sound like. It is interesting that the day before you have this off the books meeting at Michael Lang's house, Nicole Albert says, we will get more information tomorrow, meaning the very day you show up at Lang's house. She says, again, I never. So again means she's referencing something she said before. That's an indicator of deception. I never spoke with Michael Lang at his house. So now we have an indicator that she did speak with Michael Lang at his house. It was not, so this is an uncontracted denial or an uncontracted statement, an off the books meeting. So we are just getting indicator after indicator after indicator of deception about this meeting at Michael Lang's house. It was Carrie dropping her daughter at one of her good friend's house. Very rehearsed statement right there. Whose husband happens to be a Canton cop. That is what it is. That is the truth. So I'm going to play that one for you because there are so many indicators that you just have to hear it. You just have to hear what that sounds like. So
It is interesting that the day before you have this off the books meeting at Michael Lang's house, Nicole Albert says, we'll get more info tomorrow, meaning the very day you show up at Lang's house.
Again, I never spoke with Mike Lang at his house. It was not an off-the-books meeting. It was Carrie dropping her daughter at one of her good friend's house, whose husband happens to be a Canton cop. That is what it is. That is the truth.
So they met with Trooper Tully. It's spelled wrong here, but they met with Trooper Tully. What exactly did he tell you at this meeting about this Michael Lang issue? He said, did you go to Michael Lang's on January 30th? 30th. And at first I said, no, I've never been to his house, which is a lie. And then I thought about it and said, oh my gosh. And that is her rehearsed statement there. She always says, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Yes, I did go there. And which, again, now this is more evidence that when she says never, that's a lie, because now she's actually admitting to it here. And that was the extent of the conversation. You said, yeah, I did go there. And he didn't ask a follow-up, like, what the heck are you doing in Michael Lang's house the day after this issue? He didn't ask you a follow-up like that. Keep in mind, this is a trooper doing an investigation. She says, I do not believe he did. So that's a lie. So Trooper Tully had you come down for an interview. He confronted you with a fact that had never been disclosed before. To wit, you showed up at Michael Lang's house. And when you said, yeah, oh yeah, hang on. I think your words were, oh my gosh. Yeah, I think I did go there. And he didn't ask a follow-up question. Very long question, but very pertinent. She says, he was there. You're spinning all of this. Complete evasion. Fumbling over words and complete evasion here. I know I do a lot of things. Yeah, I don't spin. There's a judge here to make sure that I don't spin. I'm asking you a question. It's very direct. She says, I do not believe he asked me a follow-up question. This is a lie. It's an uncontracted statement. That's a lie. So the next question. The same report that has you at Michael Lang's house has you picking up Nicole Albert going by 34 Fairview just before you went to Michael Lang's house. You're aware of that? She says, we did not pick up Nicole Albert. So that's a lie. They did pick up Nicole Albert. So you went to 34 Fairview, then diverted. And right after you went to 34 Fairview, went directly over to Michael Lang's house. What was the reason you stopped at 34 on the 31st? We didn't stop by. Maybe Carrie slowed down, but we did not stop. That's a lie. But we did not stop. And I put so close, so close. She almost says, we didn't stop by. If she would have ended it there, we didn't stop by, that would have been an honest denial. And she says, maybe Carrie slowed down, but we did not stop by 34. But so close, because she can't help it. Once she says a definitive lie with no indicators, she just rephrases it and goes back and reduces the commitment there. And then, see, this is pertinent here. If the report shows that you actually stopped at 34 Fairview and then went to Michael Lang's house, then we have another oh my gosh moment. And she says, no oh my gosh moment. We did not pick up Nicole Albert. So she is aware that he's not allowed to talk about this. For some reason, he's not allowed to push on this issue. He can only insinuate that that's what the report says, but he can't go into it. So she just sticks with her story. But again, she can't help the indicators of deception here. So again, she says she did not pick up Nicole Albert. Did anybody else go with you over to Michael Lang's house? No, it was Carrie, myself, and her daughter. Now, this is interesting because when people list things, they list things in order of importance. So unless they think that you're listening to the order of importance and then they reverse it. So they'll put the most important person last if they try to reverse it. Clearly the daughter, well, I shouldn't say clearly because she said initially that they were going there for the daughter, which means, did anybody else go there? She should have said either, no, it was just myself, Carrie, and Carrie's daughter, or she should have said it was Carrie's daughter, Carrie, and myself. Because if she's prioritizing the reason why they went, she said they went to drop off Carrie's daughter. That's it. That was the only reason why they went. So, but in her mind here, the daughter doesn't even play a role. So the purpose of this meeting was to get Carrie over there in communication, to have a conversation between Carrie, Nicole Albert, and Officer Lang's wife. And this is speculation on my part. I don't have anything in here to support this, but it appears that Officer Lang didn't want to directly involve himself in this and instead was passing information through his wife to this small group. And the reason why I think that is because of all the sensitivity around this and the fact that we know that those are the people who were there. So, Ms. McCabe, we've talked in detail about some of the calls with John O'Keefe on the morning of the 29th. You recall that? Yes. So he's going through the timeline of all of the calls. She's just saying correct, correct, correct. So according to you, you literally butt dialed John O'Keefe's phone 6 times in the span of 19 minutes. Is that right? When he goes through that timeline, he says that she called him and he didn't answer, and then she would call right back. And her response to why she was calling him over and over again during that time, which is after the time that he had been struck on the head, after his skull had been fractured. He mentions at the end that is the time when his skull was fractured. She says that she butt dialed. All 6 of those calls were butt dials. So he says, you butt dialed John O'Keefe's phone 6 times in the span of 19 minutes. Is that right? And she says, I don't remember making any of those calls. So she does. That she doesn't say I can't remember. She says I don't remember any of those calls. So my assumption, and again now, she has just said that I can say whatever I want to after this, because now she's saying it's an assumption, is I put my phone in my back pocket and that was it. So think about that for a second. My assumption is that I put my phone in my back pocket and that was it. My phone automatically called and hung up over and over again because there was no messages being left either. So your claim is that you don't remember those incessant dials and those incessant hangups at all, correct? Meaning that she hung up before going to voicemail so that she could call back again. If it's a butt dial, it's gonna ring until it goes to voicemail. Then you're gonna get like 3 minutes of dead air time and then, another butt dial. But she hung up before. So she's saying that the phone in her back pocket called and hung up 6 times within a span of 19 minutes. And then he says, is that correct? You don't remember that? And she says, I honestly don't. This is nice. This gives us one final sort of indicator that when she says honestly, it's being deceptive, because clearly common sense, not even using deception detection, common sense tells us that this is deceptive. So you would have had to forget that you interacted. So that means you would have had to interact with that phone 14 times over the course of 19 minutes at the exact time that the Commonwealth suggests he lost his life, the period between 1229 and 1250, which is the exact period that you were, quote, butt dialing John multiple times. So this is where this ends on this day. I'm sure there's more testimony. The one that I downloaded ended here, but this is more than enough for us. Oh, and I forgot, there's an area in here. They never spoke about what they expected my testimony to be. Oh, I jumped over this part. Let's go back to this part real quick. And during the half hour to an hour, did you go over with you what they expected your testimony to be? They never spoke about what they expected my testimony to be. This is where I got nervous, thinking this is in regards to ADA Lawley, talking with her about her testimony. Is it possible that either the prosecution withheld something or that she is using the word never truthfully, which would be really crazy? That would be a first for me. And then I skipped over this, but let's look at this. Miss McCabe, when we started this conversation, it was because you said in answer to my question, was anything ever brought up to you about this meeting in Lang's house? You said yes. So obviously they did talk to you about your testimony. Wasn't just about the process, correct? And she says, I was told I asked what discovery had been turned in regards to me. So you wanted to prepare to make sure that you knew what you might be asked on cross-examination, correct? And she says, I wanted to know what was coming. Yes. During this meeting, did Mr. Lawley tell you one of the things that was going to be coming? Did you had an off-the-book meeting at Lang's house for 45 minutes? Did he tell you that? No, that's not how it was told. So when she uses the word never here, they never spoke about what they expected my testimony to be. The reason why is because of this. She asked for discovery so that she could prep. So she, in fact, did speak to them. Well, they didn't tell her what they expected her testimony to be. She went to get discovery so that she could prep her testimony. The overlap there created her to say they never spoke about what they expected my testimony to be, but she was there to get information from them regarding the discovery that they had gotten to help her prep for her testimony. So, well, I guess they did actually give it to her. They gave her the discovery so that she could prep herself for her testimony. So there is an explanation for that. I don't know if they did tell the defense that they gave that or that they had that meeting or not. That's all up to them. But what we know is that she was being deceptive here, and that's explained right after. All right. So that's all I have here. I know that there's more testimony from Miss McCabe, but we don't need to go through all of that. Her indicators are very clear, and you can use this if you want to go through those on your own. It's very easy. You can just look for these indicators. Once we got about halfway through, we knew all of the indicators that she uses. If she ever says 100%, if she uncontracts a denial, if she says absolutely not, that is absolutely a lie. She has very distinct rehearsed phrases. If she does a negative statement with an explanatory statement, that's a lie. And she'll usually follow that up with a character builder, like that she's an honest person or the truth is on their side. The word never is 100% always a lie. And then when she says the word incorrect, I knew there was another one in there. She likes to say incorrect. She likes to say absolutely not. She likes to say never. And she likes to uncontract denials. That's how she deals with the stress of lying, of being deceptive. So that's it for this one. There's not a whole lot of speculation for me to do on this. I kind of wanted to give you an example of how I was going to change the format. In the videos prior to this, I was speculating, developing theories about what could have happened throughout the course of the narrative. And that was a mistake on my part. I shouldn't have done that because it confuses my brainstorming on what could happen to fill in the gaps with the deception detection. So from now on, we're just going to go through the statements and pick out all of the deception. And then off camera, what I'm going to do is create a timeline of what we've learned from the evidence, which is known facts. So things that help the timeline, any times that we can put onto the timeline are very helpful. Like we actually got times for John O'Keefe's, he doesn't explicitly say his time of death, which means that was when when his skull was fractured. And then I believe his time of death is much later when he freezes to death. So I create a timeline. I use all of the known facts that we've got, all the evidence. Then we fill in the deceptions. So every statement in here that's deceptive, if it's a yes or no type of a scenario, if it's a binary thing, then I know that where it's deceptive, the truth is the opposite. There are some open-ended things where she's deceptive, but there could be a bunch of different possible answers. And so I would just leave that as a big open circle on there. And when I go to put the next person's testimony on that timeline, I'll be looking at those big open circles. Do I get facts, evidence, or definitive information that I can fill in these gaps with? Or even deception that's binary as opposed to deception with multiple open scenarios, possibilities. Jen McCabe was not directly involved in the murder. So she's clearly involved in the cover-up. She knows way too much in here to not be part of the cover-up. So she's definitely aware of what went on. That's a fact. That is not a theory of mine. I really don't have any theories to interject into here. She clearly, based on the evidence and her responses to the evidence, she clearly saw Karen Reed's SUV at least once every 3 minutes for the entire 15 minutes that it was parked out there. She also very clearly had absolutely no indication that she had hit John O'Keefe. She basically says she saw the SUV, it moved forward. Basically, the insinuation, my theory, if you want to call it, she moved forward probably to let someone else park when Brian Nagel came, or, for some reason she moved forward in order to let other people park behind her. And then eventually she just left. And apparently she was observed by Jen McCabe for that entire time. As Jen McCabe tells you in here that she thought that John O'Keefe was driving. So she was texting John O'Keefe to move the vehicle forward, things like that. And wasn't getting any sort of a response because she wasn't aware that Karen Reed was actually behind the wheel at that point. That's what we learned. And I really don't have anything to add as far as theories go. If you like this, please subscribe, keep watching my videos because eventually the Karen Reed trial is going to be over here. And I'm just going to keep doing this with other trials and statements from celebrities that beat their significant others and say they didn't do it or whatever. So I appreciate your guys' support and keep seeking the truth. And this is Truth Revealed signing off.